Hey y'all, and welcome back to the Book of Brianna, a podcast. I am your host, Dr. Brianna Whiteside, and I'm so excited to chat with you today about your plans, God's plans, and making the enemy change his plans. You all, I know I just said a mouthful, but bear with me. I have a lot to say. So let's talk about your plans, right? What I've learned, and I'm going to put myself out here first and foremost, what I've learned is one of the reasons why it has been historically increasingly difficult for me to kind of obey God and surrender to his plans is because my plans were always in the forefront of my mind. And I don't think it's anything wrong with having plans. Y'all know that I live by a planner. I am a planner. Like, I plan things out. I try to think 10 steps ahead before I make a decision, generally. Sometimes it don't always happen like that. But I try to be a planned person, right? But some things you just can't plan for. But I used to live under the assumption, or I still do sometimes, that it's better to have a plan and not need it than not have a plan and need one. And so one reason why I've noticed that in the past it was a little bit difficult for me to follow or obey God was because my plans. I wanted to live my life how I wanted to live my life. And I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong with wanting to live your best life. I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to be successful at all. That is one of my goals. But it is when your plans start to rub against God's plans and you decide to go with what you want to do instead of what he wants for you, right? This is why a lot of people don't obey God. This is why a lot of people also struggle and drag their feet and say, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And it's not necessarily because God's plan is going to fail or God's plan is going to, is lame. Some people may consider it lame. But once they get into it, they're like, yo, this is the best. This was the best plan. This should have been the plan all along. But it's not necessarily that those things, is that we start to count what it's going to cost us. That means that you're going to have to give up your dreams, your hopes, your desires. You're going to have to give up your career choices to come into agreement with why he created you, right? And because we are so hyper aware of what we're not going to be able to do, when God starts to walk up on us like, hey, here is your assignment, we're like, get somebody else to do it, right? And I know we say this jokingly in culture, but I don't think we really realize the impacts that it has on not just ourselves, but also our lineages and therefore the larger impacts on the world. And so when we have our plans in the forefront, we're basically saying, God, let me be the God of my life. I know better, even though when he breathed you into time, he had already planned your life for you. Right? There are already these different avenues that he figured out, these different probabilities that he figured out for you. And like, okay, if this person makes this decision to not go this way, this is how we're going to get them to, the desired end. If they go this way, this is how we're going to get them to the desired end. So you're thinking about a man, a spirit who sits outside of time and who's calculate every probability, every choice you could potentially make, and already had a destined route for you to get to his idea for you. But we, in our limited understanding, in our limited wisdom, in our humanity, we say, I know what's best for my life, even though we don't know what's best for our lives, right? We know what's best for our moment, right? The moment that we're in now. We know how we feel about it. We know those things, but we don't necessarily know what's best for our lives long term. We do know what we want, but as far as going as best goes, there are a lot of things that we just don't know. Like, say for instance, you say, I want to be here a certain place by 25 or 35 even. You don't know the state of the world. That's going to be out of your control, out of your hands. So because you don't know the state of the world and something could happen, your 5-year plan or your 10-year plan can be derailed. Why? Because there are other things that are in play right now that you just don't have any control of. But you do have control of your actions in the moment, in the right now. And I think that's so important to remember, that While you may not be able to control your future, you can make very informed decisions that will benefit not only your right now, but also your future and the future of your children. I'm in a moment right now where God is demanding a new level of obedience from me. Now, we have never been this way before, y'all. I know that I teach a lot about obeying God, and I have disciplined myself to obey God blindly, to obey God when I didn't understand, to obey God when I was in pain, to obey God when I didn't want to. I have disciplined myself to obey God, and now I'm in the middle of another obedience decision, and it's not a decision I've ever had to make in my life before. And it takes me every day to get up and say, okay, this is what you're demanding of me. This wasn't necessarily my plan for my life at 33. This wasn't necessarily my desire either. However, I know that I don't know the future. And because I don't know the future, I would rather bet on the God who is nudging me in a specific direction than bet on myself based on my limited perception and say, no, I'm going to do what I want to do, because what I want to do allows me to have just a little bit of comfort, right? And when you know that what you want to do is generally, it allows you to remain comfortable. It allows you to not sacrifice. It allows you not to feel the pain of growth. That's what you want to do. Every cell in our body is meant to regenerate, to protect us, to keep us living, right? Our organs, all the things, they function to keep us living. And so your decisions too function to keep you living. But the fascinating thing is God crafted those organs based on what he knew about humanity. So the organs and the blood and the cells, everything within your body functions in according to how God created them to function. We have free will, right? We have the ability to say, yeah, I know you created me to function in this way, but I don't want to do that. I want to have fun. I want to live my life. I want to do all these things, and rightfully so, right? YOLO. However, you do only live once, but you have to remember that the world, humanity is so interconnected that what you don't do now, someone's gonna pay for your inability to do what you were supposed to do. And I think that it would be selfish of you to not make certain sacrifices, to not go ahead and go with God, because someone could have done that in your life, your parents, your grandparents, or whatever, and it could have derailed the lineage. What if the lineage was supposed to be further than where it is now? But because the generations prior decided, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to do that, every generation down until it gets to you. And as a result, the lineage is where you are right now, currently, whatever season that is of your life. And then you make that same decision. And then that pressure falls to your children or your grandchildren, right? And you're going to see them struggle with it because you wanted your plan. And as a result of, I want to live my life, I want my plan, now the next generations are going to suffer, and the lineage is not going to get to where it was naturally supposed to be. That's why I don't get mad at people who were, quote unquote, were born with a silver spoon in their mouths. I can't get mad at them, right? When we could talk about all the systemic issues all we want to, and they are contributing factors. But the truth is, somebody in their family did something that they were supposed to do that helped the lineage progress. So when it got to the person who you may know currently in culture or in your family who was born with a silver spoon in their mouth, they're the recipient of a generational blessing. Whenever people don't do what they're supposed to do, their lineages, their descendants are recipients of generational curses, right? And so it's not as spooky or mystical as a lot of people try to make it. It comes down to decisions. Who's willing to pay the price for the rest of the lineage? If everyone in the lineage paid their price, the lineage will progressively get better. Let me say this. Let me think about my last name. I'll use me as an example. I have my father's last name, Whiteside. It's not as common as other last names may be, but I do. I have my father's last name, and the Whiteside, it sounds like it should be prestigious. Like when I hear the name, it sounds like we should be prestigious. But the Whitesides are not prestigious in my family. We're not. Some of them are doing really well. Some of them are fantastic. But what I sense is that the lineage should have been further than where it currently is. This is not me just looking at my family. This is like God saying, no, the lineage should have been better. I ordained this lineage to be better, but because of whatever decisions people made, it stagnated, right? There were skips, there were stutters in the progression. And imagine me saying, well, ain't nobody do it for me, so I ain't gonna do it for myself or my lineage. I don't care what they gotta go through. I had to struggle. That's toxic. You know, that is really problematic. I hear a lot of people say that when I'm on social media, when people are saying, well, I had to figure it out at 17. Well, if you had to figure out at 17, you knew how hard it was for you to figure it out. So why would you want your child to have to figure it out at 17 when they really need your guidance and your help? Why are we so quick to pass down the struggle and not pass down the soft life or the progression? It's wild. But it's going to require that you be flexible in what? Your plan. Your plan, when you're thinking about your plan, is really an immediate self-centered thought. And there's nothing wrong with, in the immediacy of your decision making, you're thinking about, okay, how is this going to impact me? But if you dig a little bit deeper, your decisions have to consider other people so they won't be just selfish. I can't tell you how many times I have to make hard choices that I don't want to make. Y'all, I don't want to make some of the decisions that I make. I don't want to do it. I don't want to struggle in some of the areas I struggle in. I don't want to sacrifice in some of the areas I have to sacrifice in. I don't want to do some things. I'm just going to be 100%. I think it's unfair for me to have to do some things. But if Christians, if we're quick to say favor ain't fair, and we run around a church with that, we need to keep that same energy when it's time for us to sacrifice. Sacrifice ain't fair. Run around the church. Because you can't have one run and be happy and amped on the one side and cower on the other side. You can't say favor ain't fair when God is doing something for you. But when it's your time to pay your dues, you crying, spitting, and farting and saying, I don't want to do it. And therefore you are continuing the bad behavior of your forefathers. That's a problem. And God puts us in every family, every lineage to play our part. You have a part to play in the lineage. And if you don't play your part, the responsibility of your part falls to the next person. And that's unfair. That is unfair, right? And so we have to get outside of ourselves to say, okay, I'm going to just have to pay this price. That's how I am right now. Like, all right, if this is what you're requiring of me, God, if this is the way I got to go, I'm just going to go ahead and go and get it over with. It doesn't mean that it feels good to my feelings. It doesn't mean that it feels good to my emotions. It doesn't mean any of that. Actually, it doesn't. It is painful. But growth is painful. Elevation is painful, and it comes with pressure, right? Think about when the image that is coming before me is when we are on a plane and the plane is about to take off. What happens? It's on the runway, did it fast, and when it starts to go up into the sky, into the atmosphere, we have to kind of lean back because what? Of the gravity, we're going against the grain. So there is pressure when you are elevating, adapting to God's plan, right? But some of us don't want to feel the pressure of elevation Because we think that when the pastor or whomever says God is about to elevate you, it is just about to be great. No, you're going to feel that pressure of the upward climb. You're going to feel that pressure. You're also going to feel that pressure when you try to stay on the ground. When you try to stay in your current position. The pressure is going to be the pressure. The pressure is getting worse. It's going to be the pressure. Which pressure are you willing to feel? Are you going to feel the pressure of the ascend? Or are you going to feel the pressure and the discomfort of you not sacrificing your plans and staying in this certain type of environment, wherever it is that you're trying to resist growing out of? Are you going to feel that pressure of staying there because you're likely outgrowing it, right? And so I know that in culture, in church world, we talk a lot about purpose, right? And purpose is important, right? We all have a general purpose, but we all have specific, we have a general purpose. Let me just start there. So we have this umbrella. Let's think about our purpose as an umbrella. Purpose is an umbrella, but under that umbrella of purpose, we have individual assignments. And sometimes, more times than not, the assignments change. So God may have had you in doing a particular thing for the first 5 years, and then he's like, all right, you've graduated, you've passed these tests, now it's time to go on to the next grade, which means you have a new assignment. However, because we have kind of like, okay, well, I have my plans on this level, I haven't reached my goals, I'm not ready. I'm going to continue to do what I want to do on this level. That's a problem. That is a problem, because you're threatening to not only stagnate your life, but you're threatening to stagnate everyone's life that is connected to you. Everyone's life that is connected to you. When people are in relationships with you, when you are in relationships with them, sometimes you are drafted into the battles with them. That is part of being connected to people. Even if it's not your fight, sometimes you're drafted in because you are connected to them. How about you draft people? If they're going to be connected to you, or you're going to be connected to them, how about you draft them into a upward fight that is you're guaranteed to win? How about that? Instead of drafting them into a war that you know they're going to lose because of your inability to be flexible in life. Sometimes your plans stop you from being flexible in ways that God wants you to, or needs you to be flexible to fulfill his plans and purposes in the earth. So I'm not telling you to fully throw your plans away. I am saying make sure you're flexible, because plans always change, and God always changes them. He does. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I'm going to be 100%. I don't like when God changes the plans, because I'm like, you could have just gave me the whole blueprint. I could have seen the outline of the situation, and I could have known, all right, let's go ahead. But he doesn't work like that. He doesn't. Sometimes he will blind you to the next steps and say, take this step. And you like, all right, well, what's behind door number 1? That ain't none of your business. Take this step. All right, cool, I'm gonna take it, but what is awaiting me behind door number 1? That don't concern you. You don't have the clearance to know that you need to take this step, right? And when we're inflexible in that way, we're like, no, I ain't going nowhere until you tell me. Because you may have an idea of what God wants for you, but you'll never know the fullness of it, because he doesn't give you the full picture at all. He may give you a glimpse of a future moment in your life, but you'll never know the full picture. But you will also never know the full picture if you refuse to go and see what the end has for you, right? And so when God has his plans, and he does, you came to earth with a God plan hardwired within you, whether you realize it or not, whether you submit to it or not, you came to earth with the wiring of a God plan. When God says, all right, time for part 2 of the plan, and you're like, nah, because part 2, I don't know what this is going to require of me. It's scary, it's nerve-wracking, and you don't move, heaven has no obligation to fund that disobedience. Heaven has no obligation to fund your disobedience. Heaven has every obligation to fund your obedience. I think that is also one of the reasons why I'm so successful in what I do. Even if it's not successful in the way that I would want to be successful, in God's eyes, I do believe that it's successful because I run the play. You give me the plan, you give me the play, I'm just going to run the play. Like I mean, if you didn't tell me this is a group project and includes somebody else, it's me and you, all right, cool, I'm going to be obedient. And heaven has to finance my obedience. Like if you go and look in the Bible, y'all, look at how many blessings are attached to obedience. And it's not that you got to pray and petition God. Your obedience automatically unlocks a blessing, just as your disobedience automatically unlocks a curse. There are times, I don't even know what I want to call it, but whatever I want to call it, that's the thing. But listen, your decisions are the keys to unlocking certain things in your life. Yes, pray, yes, fast, yes, give, yes, do all the things that, you know, we're taught to do. But do understand that you can't sow your way out of disobedience. You can't pray your way out of disobedience. When God says this is the law for your life, this is the law for your life. And that goes into standards, right? Yes, we have a general believer standard. However, there are also standards that are specific to each individual based on what we're called to do in this world. So some people can do certain things that Brianna just can't do because we don't have the same standard. We don't have the same requirement of our lives. Do I think it's unfair sometimes? Absolutely. Because sometimes I want to be in the street too. I'm an unmarried woman. But God's like, no, that's not the standard for your life. And it don't matter what someone else is doing. What did I tell you to do? Because you have to walk a specific path. Yes, y'all are all believers. Yes, y'all are all my children. But I have different expectations for each of y'all. And if you come to me talking about, but you let them do it. I know they used to grind my mother's gears. It's 5 of us. And when she'll tell one person to do something and we feel like, you know, the other person that has to do it, why such and such ain't got to do it? It don't matter what ain't got to do it. I told you to do it. You know what I mean? Like, it don't matter. Stop comparing yourself. And why would you want to compare yourself to a standard that is not even comparable to who you are? Why would you want to compare yourself to someone who is not called to do the thing you do, who's also not called to elevate in a way that you're elevate? Why are you comparing yourself down? That don't make no sense to me. It don't make sense, which is why we got to mind the business that pays us, okay? I am masterful at minding my own business because it don't matter. Because if I start looking at what God let other people do, I'm going to be church hurt. I'm going to be salty. I'm going to be crying, spitting, and farting. I'm going to be like, oh my God, it's so unfair. But if you keep your eyes on your own paper, you won't even know. You won't even know what other people are doing. Worry about yourself. Face your front. You can't walk looking to the right or to the left. You can't walk looking behind you. Pay attention to what's in front of you. Keep your eyes on your own paper. That's really how you got to do it. And so when when his plan steps in and derails your plan, you got to be flexible with it. Sometimes we don't want to be flexible with it, but you're going to have to be flexible with it, which means that you're going to have to be flexible with your life. I don't think it's funny. I don't think it's cute when believers say, I know God is calling me to do this, but you know, I'm dragging my feet or I'm just not going to do it. That ain't cute. That's not funny to me, because you are openly admitting that you are disobeying God. You can ask any of my friends, anybody connected to me, and when you make the mistake of telling me what you're supposed to be doing, that means that automatically I registered that in my mind and I'm gonna ask you about it. Hey, what's going on with such and such in a few months, right? I'm gonna ask you about it. And you say, I ain't do it, I'm not on your side. I'm not on your side, I'm on God's side. And in that moment, you're going to feel that I don't care about you, and I do. I care about you so much that I'm going to hold you to the standard of who God created you to be. But I'm also on God's side. So if you feel comfortable enough telling me that you're not on God's side by obeying him, by doing what is required of you, I feel like you tripping. And I'm going to tell you that. Because there's no way that you're going to continue to be connected to me, and I know this may seem harsh, but it's easier for someone to pull you off a chair than you to pull somebody up on a chair. And because I know how much I've paid the price in my own life for so long, I can't afford to surround myself with people who are willfully disobedient. Like you wake up and choose disobedience every day. I can't afford to surround myself with you because you are in disobedience, and I don't know what consequences come into your life as a result. And I don't also want to be affected by that consequence that you have decided that you wanted to pay. You have decided, when you say, I'm going to be disobedient, I'm not going to do what he told me to do, you have decided that I'm willing to handle that smoke. I'm not built to handle the smoke with God. I don't know if y'all have tried to fight with God and, show your strength with him. I'm not strong enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not wise enough. I know the power of the person who I say I serve and I love. I know the power of him, and there's only limited knowledge of the power. And I also know my limited understanding and my limited power. So when you match the ultimate power with my little power that he lends me from him, and I know at any moment he could decide, oh, you disobeyed me, give me my breath back. That's not a price I'm willing to pay. Right? And I don't think that's a price that anyone should be willing to pay. Yes, we're under grace, but that does not absolve us from paying consequences of our decisions. And I'm sorry to get so loud and amped up about this, but it's real, y'all. Like, I feel like we have abused grace for so long that we have set the kingdom back eons and eons. And it's only when we decide to pay the cost of obedience that we can continue to press forward. But it takes everyone's obedience and everyone's willingness to play their part. We all got to play our part, right? And that is agreeing with God's plan. You got to agree, and agree quickly. Agree, offer no resistance, agree quickly. And so the last thing I want to talk about is making the enemy change his plan. So y'all know the enemy is not omniscient. He's not all-knowing. He's not omnipresent. He has clues on who you're supposed to be. He has clues. There are always these listening spirits, and people reporting back to the kingdom of darkness, just like there are people reporting in the kingdom of light. And so he has clues. He has people monitoring the lineage. He knows more about your lineage than you do because you're only playing a part. He's been around for a while, right? And so they've seen certain shifts in your lineage. So they have certain clues, but they don't know everything. They don't know what God knows. They don't, they can't move in the way that he moves. So because the enemy knows, okay, I have an idea, and he's watched you. The demons have watched you grow up, and they've watched what took everyone in your family out. They're like, all right, cool. Let's go ahead and launch strategy A1 at her from birth, right? Or from childhood. Strategy A1 has taken the previous generations out in their childhood. So he's like, okay, those strategies work. Let's go ahead and launch strategy A1. All right. Strategy A1 it worked a little bit, but you obeyed your way out of it. God had mercy on you. So he like, all right, cool. We did a little bit damage. Let's go ahead and launch strategy A2. This is in your adolescence. Strategy A2 is launched. This is when people may have become teenage parents. People have, dropped out of school. This is what other people in the lineage have done. All right, cool. It didn't really work. She decided to go another way. Go ahead and launch A3. All right, A3 is you in early adulthood. Now, you're in adulthood. You're trying to figure it out. You don't really know if this is going to work out for you or not, following God. Like you may have been heard about church or raised in church, but you're trying to figure it out. Strategy A3 is the spiritual stuff. He's like, yeah, let's not get her far enough in this spiritual stuff. Let's go ahead and infiltrate her idea, her sight, her understanding with new age practices, right? So we're doing strategy A3. You may start to dabble, you may start to look into it, but the Holy Spirit within you may be like, that ain't for you. This ain't the right thing that you're exploring. pull back, pull back, pull back. So when he tells you to pull back, strategy A3 doesn't really work. So then he says, all right, let's look back over it and let's look at what she struggled with in her childhood. Let's look at what she struggled with in her adulthood. What has become consistent? What has been the most constant thing? Let's use that to launch strategy A4. Now, strategy A4 is based on all the things that have, that you've struggled with or you've tried to overcome in the past, but you haven't fully overcome them, but you're still trying to progress toward. This is strategy A4. He's gathered enough information on you since you were born, knows what your hot spots are, knows what generally gets you emotional. This is strategy A4. And they're like, this gonna work. Oh, this show gonna work. They gonna love this because this gonna work on them. And then they launch A4 and they see you. You don't bend in the way you usually bend. You don't break down. You don't fall apart. You instead you turn to God. You level up, right? You realize that this is a tactic of the enemy. Let me not go ahead and play into it. Let me go a different route than what my flesh really wants to do, because I really do want to show out on them. I really do want to cuss them out. I want to act a fool because it made me feel better. But you realize this is what they want to do. They want to get a rise out of me with strategy A4. So because A4 didn't work, now the enemy has to say, what else we got on her? Bring me the docket. What else we got? Because now we need to launch A5. A4 should have took you out. A4 should have set you back though. But because you have spent enough time with God, and because you have enough sweat equity in this thing, and because you're mature, you've moved from the milk of the word to the meat of the word. Now the enemy's like, now we got to get a docket for case 5. We got to get a file for case 5 to try to stop her from what? Becoming who God created her to be. Because if she becomes who God created her to be, everyone else has a better chance in her lineage of becoming that too. Even the ones that's still alive that, live their lives that are older than her. But we really want this next generation. So if we don't stop her with A4 or A5, which is the upcoming attack, we risk losing an entire, not just one generation, tens of generations, right? Because this person serves as the inflection point. And on the chart, the graph can be going downward, but there's a moment, an inflection point, when it stops and turns in the other way. So the enemy's like, yo, we need to stop her from becoming the inflection point, or just stay at the bottom. We don't need her going back up. So what's A5? You got to make the enemy change his plans, because if he keeps attacking you with the same stuff, that means that you'll never graduate in certain ways, right? Because you're going to keep taking that test until you pass that test. But also, you're never going to progress, and you're never going to have another object in your toolkit to fight the enemy. Make him change his plans. Make him change his strategies against you. Don't make it so easy for the enemy, because he's launching the same thing against you in different areas. It's the same thing. If you sit and you silence your emotions long enough and you think about what's going on, you say, I've kind of did this already. Like, we've already seen this part of the book, part of the movie. It wasn't necessarily the same wording, but the scenario, I've seen this before. But the enemy would never upgrade his tactics against you if you don't learn to make him change his tactics against you, because he's not going to stop. It ain't even really about you. It's about what's coming after you. So he's not going to stop. He's going to keep going because they have too much, the kingdom of darkness has too much stake in the game. It's really up to you to say, not on my watch. I realize what the enemy is trying to do. Submit to God. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. That has been the scripture that I've been standing on for this last season of my life. That scripture that says, submit to God, and if you resist the devil, he will flee from you. The first thing you have to do is submit to God. And I'm always reminding God, hey, I'm submitting to what you called me to do in this season. I'm submitting to the word that you've given me. I'm submitting to your will. In my submission, I am standing firm, which ultimately means I am resisting the tactics of the enemy. This person needs to flee. He needs to go. He needs to flee. Because this is the word. Like, generally my strategy lately has been reciting the word, not my emotionalism, not how I feel. This is the word. This is what the word says. That has been my strategy, to continue to, one, help me submit to God, but two, to resist the enemy, because the enemy knows the Bible too. He knows the word. He knows the word, right? And that is your warfare strategy. Don't go off into emotionalism. Don't go off into crying, spitting, and farting. Don't go off into throwing a tantrum. It's time that we mature as believers. It's time that we grow up. And this is part of the maturation process, because what you don't do, your children are going to have to do. And I don't know any good parent that doesn't care about the future of their child. So when you find it hard for you to make certain decisions, and you can't make them, the decisions for you, because you may feel a little weak, I get that. Remember your children, even if they're not here. Remember, would you want your kids to suffer this way? Would you want your kids to face the Goliaths that you face? Because they shouldn't see them anymore, because mommy or daddy should have handled them. Would you want your kids to deal with that? I know I don't want my children to deal with that, which is why I make a lot of decisions that I make. Yes, it's about the kingdom, but I really don't know y'all like that. You know what I mean? Like, y'all are God's children. Y'all not my children. So, no shade though, right? I love the kingdom. I love God, but y'all not my children. I know that the one day children, I'm going to love them. And so I'm going to make decisions for them. So think about your one day children. Think about your one day nieces or nephews. Think about people outside of yourself and ask yourself, am I making the right decisions, right? And I'm going to leave you with that. I hope this episode has encouraged you. Please like it, share it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And thank you for joining me on another episode of the Book of Brianna, a podcast. I'll see you soon. Bye.